A Thanksgiving gift when the headlines say Agbali sets career highs with points and rebounds. 21 points and 13 rebounds. It's liable to be a good day. Let's get to it. Okay, I hope you all enjoyed a fantastic Thanksgiving. You know, I really wanted to get the video out yesterday, but I was just too laden down with food in a food coma, and I couldn't get one of the few times couldn't get motivated to do a late night video on Rutgers basketball and football during Thanksgiving week. But that being said, we come away with a win in Las Vegas against UNLV. I don't care what anybody says. It's a solid win, 80-65. Yes, it's not, Jerry Tarkanian, Tark the Shark, and Reggie Theus and Larry Johnson's UNLV teams that won national championship, went to the Final Four. That being said, it's a good win coming off a closer than expected loss against Notre Dame. A lot of people felt that, we had the potential of getting outclassed by Notre Dame. And a lot of watchers of the program saying, Notre Dame, it stinks. They're not that good. That's nonsense. They're better than you think they are. They have some really good players, particularly at the guard position. Nonetheless, it kind of started off that way. We're like, all right, here we go. But that's kind of becoming our modus operandi of light, getting off to bad starts. And I'll get to that game in a second. Nonetheless, we get a double-digit 80-65 win against UNLV on a night when Agbali goes for career highs, 21 points and 13 rebounds. Now, that's the second time in the past couple weeks when you see that in a headline. It's going to be a pretty good night. Need to get productivity out of him. But, this continues. Rutgers basketball continues to be a tale of two teams. It's different players having the hot hand, not just from game to game, but from half to half, or the team as a whole playing completely differently, from half to half, game to game. It's really strange. It's Agbali's, second chance or second time to shine in the past couple weeks with help from Dylan Grant and Darren Buchanan in the second half, another guy. We'll get to him in a second. Has these big halves, particularly in the second half where he scores all his points. But that we'll get to that in a second. But, UNLV was coming off a blowout loss to Alabama. Alabama, how are they elite in football, now elite in basketball? Nonetheless, UNLV loses 115-76. That's a big loss. So, for those fretting over the loss to Tennessee, as Lee Corso used to say, not so fast. We had a close loss to Maryland, Big Ten team, and big wins over St. Joseph's, Memphis, and Chattanooga. Sometimes Memphis is good. But as the norm, as of late, we started off with a lead, but UNLV takes the lead at the half. They make a run at the second half. They take a lead 39-33. We had taken the lead, and we were up like 15-13. And then UNLV makes a bit of a run. And then they take the lead. We regain the lead. That was like 23-21. Then it goes back and forth throughout the first half. Agbali scored 9 of Rutgers' first 11 points, but then he kind of cooled off. And then Rutgers, the last part of the first half was cooling off, and UNLV was getting some fast break opportunities, 3-point plays. They pull ahead 39-33 at half, and you're like, all right, oh boy, here we go. We understand that Rutgers A lot of new guys, maybe a little bit of a talent deficit, although I think our guys are better than we think. But we gotta handle teams that we need to handle. Not so much that we should handle, although we should, but that we need to handle, because once it gets to the Big Ten schedule, it's a different ballgame. So we're like, all right, here we go again. But we start the second half in a tale of two teams, in a tale of two cities, a tale of two halves. We start off scoring the first 11 points. Dylan Grant getting hot. He scored 7 of those points, 14 in the second half. As another guy got off to a slow start in the first half, second half, 14 points. It's unbelievable how our production is not evened out. It's really extreme. From no productivity to a lot of productivity, player to player, game to game, half to half. It's very strange. But so, we take a 5-point lead going on that run, which eventually gets to double digits, and then UNLV tries to, cut into a little bit, but then we stretch it out. Darren Buchanan hits all of his 15 points in the second half. And boy, I got to tell you, some of those shots were very, Ace Bailey kind of crazy shots that wound up going in, including a 3. And it's like, it's another guy, and I've said this continually, like, what's up with him? Well, why doesn't he start? Or why doesn't he get more playing time? His rotation kind of confuses me, but his productivity does too. He had 15 points in the second half last night. I wouldn't be shocked in the next game, which will be against number 1 Purdue. If he has like 5 points and his playing time is kind of weird. But he's a guy that's still trying to figure out what's his role, why is it more consistent, and why the wide swings in productivity. Nonetheless, he's a strange guy to figure out. But I think he definitely could be when we were wondering preseason where the points were going to come from, I felt that if he could be a guy in that 13, 14, 15 point per game range, that would certainly help our productivity. But nonetheless, we second half, we shot almost 50%. I don't know, what were we, 10 of 21, something like that. And our free throws, 22 of 27. So a couple of those things that we kind of have bugaboos with, that when we don't do well with these particular facets of the game, it's not going to be a good night. And we did well with that in the second half. Out-rebounded 45-33. We've talked about this a couple times, especially when we got out-rebounded by Central Connecticut State. In the past, Steve Peichel teams that play a half-court offense and want to be gritty and defensively, when we out-rebound, no matter the competition, we stand to have a good opportunity to win. And that stacks up how we won last night. We out-rebounded 45-33. And the one area where we were not great is three-point shooting, 4 for 16, 25%. So if we were bad from 3, couldn't out-rebound, and our free throws weren't going in, this would have been a kind of game that, you lose against UNLV and you're scratching your head and you're saying, what the hell? But nonetheless, we were good in enough areas. And oddly enough, Dylan Grant was like 1 for 6 from shooting. So that, even though we had a pretty good shooting percentage, Dylan Grant wasn't particularly hot, but he wound up having a pretty productive night. We'll get to that. Tariq Francis added 11 points, so we had a few guys in double digits. He was 4 for 4 from free throws. Talking about Jekyll and Hyde guys, a tale of two cities, a tale of two halves, a tale of two games. Badalau is absolutely a feast or famine kind of guy. 0 points, rebounds, and assists in 10 minutes. I don't know. Night Report touched on this a couple weeks ago, and this is something that I've said when I'm particularly talking about football. If you're going to establish an identity, maybe you have Battleau and Zerno and Tariq Francis. Maybe you come up with a scheme that just allows them to bombs away with 3-point shots and try to score some offense, because that's what opposing teams, lesser competition, is doing against us. And it kind of works if you can develop an offensive strategy like that and not try to be that plotting offense. Maybe that will give you some opportunities, maybe some juice in the offensive game that will allow you to pull off some wins that maybe you shouldn't, or to pull away from teams that you should. I don't know if Steve Pikiell can coach that way. Nonetheless, Battleau was kind of quiet. J. Mike, another guy, he 6 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists in 32 minutes after going for 21 points against Notre Dame. Another Feaster fan. And Chris Noilly, more people wanting to see him get more action, and he is. He had a productive 18 minutes. He gets as he gets more and more playing time. 6 points, 4 rebounds, and assists. But he was 1 for 5 on field goals. Early season, true freshman jitters. I won't kill him on that. Lino Moore, 2 for 3 in 13 minutes. Brian Storch, another guy that you're trying to figure out. They want to get him in more, but sometimes when he's not productive, he's really not productive, and then he'll have that game where he has a really productive night. 2 points in 11 minutes. And of course, Emmanuel Agboli with his 21 and 13 in 29 minutes. Hey, he was aggressive on putbacks, and you were like, wow, okay. He was taking those short range sort of jump hook shots and jumpers, but it's kind of weird. He's slow to get into position under the paint. I know he had 13 rebounds, but he's slow to move, to get his body in position, or the defensively, or to get a rebound. And it's almost like he's out of place. So I'm happy he had a productive night. He's going to need to be more productive. He can't disappear against Purdue. All right, the Big Ten schedule is coming up. He needs to be somewhat productive. He doesn't have to go 21 and 13. But if he can go, 10, 11, 12 rebounds in the Big Ten to get 5 points and just get in people's way, that would be a positive. That being said, Haroon Zerno had 0 points in 5 minutes. Another guy, 14 points against Tennessee, 3 points against Notre Dame, 0 points last night. When we talk about Notre Dame, didn't really do a video on this. It's Thanksgiving week. It's kind of it's a busy week. And despite what watchers the program say, Notre Dame has talent, and they're a pretty good team. And whereas the first few games felt like a loss, even though we won because it was really subpar. Guys like to talk about Ken Palm. I don't care what the Ken Palm is. If you need to execute on the court, any team at any given time can do that. Nonetheless, because we couldn't pull away and put them away, it kind of felt like a loss. But this loss against Notre Dame kind of felt like a win. We stayed close against a team with talent, particularly at guard. And in the game where we were out rebounded, but we were even just about everywhere else, except maybe, shooting percentage. Notre Dame shot a little better than we did. And Notre Dame against number 3 Houston, top 5 team every year, elite top 3 to 5 defense every year, close games, 66-56. So the talk about Notre Dame not being any good is greatly exaggerated. Nonetheless, it's off to Jersey Mike's against number 1 Purdue, and that will likely be, it would be great if we have a replay from a couple years ago. But if it goes the way we think it will against Purdue at home and then on the road at Michigan, we'll be 5-5. But then we close out the season, which I originally would have said were 3 winnable games, but not so much against Seton Hall. As Seton Hall is now 7-1 with a close loss to ranked USC. USC, talk about them in football, how they've developed an air raid offensive identity balanced out now with Lincoln Riley with a power running game. but you can turn that into wins and be 8-4, 9-3 in the Big Ten. You know, you lose to Oregon and Ohio State, nobody's going to kill you. But now they're good in basketball, and they're ranked. And Seton Hall had a close 83-81 loss, and a win over ranked North Carolina State with NIL. Yes, there's that moniker again. That is way less than Rutgers. So they got the wins with Shaheen Holloway, having them play well. And then it's off to, so that game, which you kind of said, all right, rivalry game, it's always going to be a game to watch, but we should win. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I mean, we can. In-state rivalry games, you never know. Even when they're better, we've had wins. But then it's off against Penn and Delaware State. And a team like Penn, those Ivy League teams that hit their free throws, hit their shots, play well, play smart, those kind of teams worry me. But just go out there and beat them. Beat Delaware State, beat Penn, and you know what? Beat your in-state rival. Go 3-0. Finish the year 8-5 on a positive note. Then you start 2026. And that's the season. You know, the Big Ten, if you look at the Big Ten right now, that could change. Not everybody is going to be 7-1, 8-2. I mean, you know, as we get into Big Ten competition, there's not a lot of wink links. I don't know about Minnesota, maybe. I mean, Nebraska's playing well. All the non-powers are playing well right now. So we'll see how the Big Ten teams shake out once they play each other. But my original sort of 14-15 win season is going to be in jeopardy if we can't make any big roads in the Big Ten. All right, it's off to SHI Stadium for our final game of the year for bowl eligibility. The bowl eligibility bowl, 5-6, 2-6 in the Big Ten. Penn State versus 5-6, 2-6 in the Big Ten. Rutgers. And as Mike from the Night Report said the other day, he's not as enthusiastic about a potential for Rutgers win as people might have been when Penn State went on that losing streak and fired James Franklin. You look at the games they're losing, they're all single-digit losses late in the game with the exception of Ohio State, and you can't kill them for that. I think there's too much hype around Terry Smith. That always happens with interim coaches, happens with UCLA, right? Until it wasn't a thing any longer. But after a rough, Grunkemeyer, after a rough start, playing better, the offense is stabilized, and we know what they want to do. They want to run it and throw it downfield. And traditionally, we've thought, thank goodness we have a traditional kind of offense, because we all know about our issues with mobile quarterbacks, spread offenses, run pass options. We get killed on the edge. But this kind of worries me too. Penn State is physically gifted, good offensive line, good defensive line. They can out-physical us. We can stop them on first and second down. They're probably going to get some chunk plays in there somewhere. Katron Allen, Nate Singleton, if they combine for 200 yards between them, it's probably a loss for us. But after a rough start by Grunkenmeyer's first game against Iowa, he was just terrible. I think even if Grunkemeyer doesn't have a great game statistically, I don't know, he's 13 for 28, but he's able to find a couple wide open guys in the secondary for touchdowns, and we give up some gash plays like we did against Purdue. Penn State's going to present some problems for us, even though they're not that explosive, dynamic offense. Now, they're like top 35 in the running game. They're not great in the passing game for obvious reasons. It's no secret what they're going to want to do, like against Ohio State against us. Yeah, they're missing two of their best wide receivers, and they want to establish the run, build momentum, and then they can start to make plays in the passing game, and that's most likely what Penn State's going to do. Defensively, Penn State is top 35 against the run. They're not great against the pass. So if we're going to have an opportunity to win this game, it's going to have to be with Ethan making plays late in the game, and hope we can pull out a 27-24, 30-27 kind of win. I don't think we can put up 30 on Penn State, quite frankly. The weather's probably going to be a little bit chilly, a little bit cold. I don't know if that'll affect the game. So Ethan will have to make plays. We'll have to do enough in the running game. Obvious, we can't turn the ball over. I have to say, even though we don't take the ball away, we're well coached in that we don't turn it over a lot and we don't commit a lot of penalties, although we've had some badly timed penalties that have hurt us in games. So when we have to be perfect in order to get a win, especially against better competition, that's a challenge for us. So we're going to need to hang in there. If Penn State starts running the ball and they're rumbling down the field and they, get a 7 to 10 point lead. But if we can make plays in the passing game against a Penn State defense that's a little bit vulnerable, and our big dogs, Ian and KJ, can make some plays, I could see a scenario where we're in it late and we can pull out a potential win. But Penn State is a 14-point favorite after opening as a 9.5 point favorite. I happen to think that's kind of right. Would I be shocked at a 27-13 loss? Absolutely not. There should be some juice for this game. It's Penn State, it's Rutgers, last game of the season, both teams fighting for a bowl, and it remains to be seen who's going to play for Penn State. Do these guys want to put themselves at risk if they're going to declare, or if they're going into the portal, whatever the case might be, just to get to a bowl game? And that's the problem with the player movement today, is that bowl games won't matter as much. So that's it. Interesting week. Hey, look, if we could come up with a win against Penn State, this would be a good week for Rutgers athletics before we head into playing Purdue and Michigan in basketball. Nonetheless, everybody, hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving week, Thanksgiving holiday. It's Black Friday and on to the holiday season. Everybody enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you the next time.